Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time. Today, we're diving into Noam Chomsky's New Horizons in the Study of Language and Mind. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Another dense book about linguistics? But trust me, this is way more than that. This book fundamentally challenges how we think about the human mind itself. So at the very heart of Chomsky's work is this deep, fascinating mystery. It's often called the poverty of the stimulus. Just think about it for a second. A little kid, within just a few years, completely masters their native language, this incredibly complex system of rules. And they do it based on messy, incomplete, sometimes even grammatically wrong sentences they hear around them. Nobody sits them down and teaches them the abstract rules, right? Yet somehow, they get it. Perfectly. So the question is, how on earth is that possible? To solve this puzzle, Chomsky flips the script completely. His core idea is that we've been thinking about language all wrong. It's not something we learn from the outside, piece by piece. Instead, he says it's a biological object. Think of it like a mental organ that grows and matures inside of us, all based on a genetic blueprint that just gets triggered by our environments. And this is really the key contrast. The traditional view sees language as something external, a public tool we pick up through social interaction. But Chomsky argues that what we should really be studying isn't the external behavior, but the internal computational system inside our heads that makes language possible in the first place. It's an inside-out job, not an outside-in one. To get really specific, he gives this internal system a name, I language. The I here is doing a lot of work. It stands for internalized, because it's inside the mind. It's individual, because it's a property of a single person's brain. And it's intentional, which is a fancy way of saying we're studying the actual procedure, the specific mental program that generates language. Okay, so if language just grows inside of us, that means the basic blueprint has to already be there, right? A child doesn't start from a totally blank slate and have to figure out all the fundamental principles of language from zero. No way. Instead, their mind comes pre-wired with a kind of universal framework for all human languages. And this leads to a really cool metaphor for how it all works, the principles and parameters model. Picture the language part of our brain as a kind of machine, like a universal switch box. The principles are the fixed wiring of that machine, the deep rules that are the same for every single human language. The parameters are all the little switches. And here's the kicker. Experience doesn't build the machine, it just flips the switches into the right position. So what does one of these switches look like? Well, take word order. A kid learning English hears eat the apple, and their brain flips a switch to the head first setting, meaning the verb comes before the object. But a kid learning Japanese hears the equivalent of apple eat, and their brain flips that exact same switch to the head last setting. It's amazing. One tiny setting, flipped by just a little bit of data, ends up defining a huge structural feature of the entire language. So as you can see, this way of looking at language has consequences that go way beyond just linguistics. It really forces us to rethink some of our most basic ideas about what it means to be human, how we learn, and what intelligence even is. It completely reframes learning. It's not about getting a passive sponge soaking up information. It's the biological growth of a system that was already there. And that changes how we see intelligence. Maybe it's not one general-purpose skill, but a whole collection of these incredible specialized tools we're born with. Most importantly, it argues that we can and should study the mind as a natural object, a part of the biological world, just like we study any other organ. And this brings us to one last really provocative thought from Chomsky. If our minds are biological systems, then our genes don't just give us our abilities, they also give us our limits. A rat can't ever understand prime numbers. It's just not in its biology. Chomsky suggests that maybe, just maybe, our own biology makes certain things about the universe fundamentally unknowable to us, true mysteries that we can never solve. For the full, long-form deep dive into this book and its ideas, follow the link in the description. If you enjoy these explainers, please subscribe and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.